My vision is to see these journals in the hands of everybody around the world. That's as short and simple as I can make that. My vision is to have people using these journals, sending positive intention and prayer in the world, for people to recognize our interdependency, to recognize our interconnectedness, to live with an open heart. And I believe that's the change that's happening. And I see these journals as a way of helping people move to that place.
How did this start for you?
It was Christmas time, and like everyone else during the holiday season, I was very busy. I had 2 teenagers I was raising, a very busy job. And I heard this quiet voice within myself saying, you need to write down everybody you've ever known. And I thought to myself, oh, that's crazy. 1, I could never remember everybody I've ever known, and 2, I'm way too busy to do that. And it was one of these back and forth kind of battles between my ego, my mind, and my heart. And I've learned through meditation to really listen to that quiet voice and pay attention, but I am too busy. And it was insistent. And so finally, I listened.
It's pretty daunting to write down everyone you know. How long did it take
Well,
you to...
I think that's why I argued with myself for a while. And once I was actually having the experience of doing that, it was just a couple of evenings. And I kind of knew when I was done. It just was a very natural ending. And I folded the papers up and wrote a prayer on the outside of the papers and put them in between my hands. And then I sent a prayer of healing and love to everybody I had remembered. I felt like I was holding everybody I had known and who had impacted my life between my hands. And it was an incredible feeling to be able to hold the people that had made such a difference in my life. One of my first names that I wrote down was the janitor that used to cross us across the street on our way to elementary school. And I thought, how did I remember his name? And I realized he represented safety. As a 5-year-old girl walking to school across the intersection, he would take my sisters and I. And he was a significant person in my life. Being in the moment, coming from an open heart, and learning to differentiate when I'm in fear or when I'm coming from a place of love. And so this presented me an opportunity to recognize where I still had limited thoughts or thoughts of anger or remorse or guilt, because there was forgiveness for myself too. I mean, some of the names that I wrote down on the paper. And so as I was saying the prayer, I was forgiving myself as well as the others, and it was an opportunity to move forward. Our outer world reflects our inner world. So the work that I do to make peace within myself is impacting everybody that I come in contact with. So to be able to send all of those people love and healing, I knew was going to have an impact. Almost as if when you're in a place of gratitude and love, grace can descend and it dissolves or melts everything else. It's as if nothing, it's like shining a light into a dark room. Nothing can exist but the light. That's how it feels. I woke up the next morning and the TV was on, and that was the morning of the tsunami. And I watched over and over. There were 200,000 people who were washed away in that tsunami. And I was hit so powerfully because I remembered, well, I realized this wasn't a coincidence. The timing of this and being directed to do this wasn't a coincidence. And I realized how many people had intersected my life, how many people I had touched, how many people had touched me. And I multiplied that by 200,000 people. I mean, they were from 30 different countries, all socioeconomic levels, different cultures, different religions. And I thought, wow, the world is going to be so different for the loss of those lives. And so this was incredibly profound for me to wake up to that event.
It's one thing to hear intellectually, we are all connected.
Right.
It's another thing to get it.
Yeah.
How did that manifest?
When I experienced the images of the tsunami and recognized the enormity of that event. And Haiti, the earthquake in Haiti, is very, very similar to that. We cannot not see how connected we are to each other. This time it wasn't a very quiet voice. It felt like a very loud directive. I was in the car, I remember it clearly. And this time, my higher self, or the higher guidance, however you want to describe it, said you need to find a way to make this available to everybody. And so began a 4-year project of turning those school-lined pieces of paper into a little journal that's made in Nepal, and getting that out to the world. And I knew that just as I had held all those people in my hands, that the journal had to be that size, to fit in between praying hands or to go over your heart. That was really important. And it was really important for everything to be handmade and all natural as well. And the Dalai Lama had mentioned this Tibetan handicraft industry in Nepal, and was quite taken with their passion and mission and vision of helping low-income Nepalese people as well as Tibetan refugees. And they hire people and give them wonderful jobs and wages. At the same time, they're preserving ancient Himalayan practice paper-making techniques, which have been handed down generations. And so Nima and his cousins started this business, and he takes the proceeds from what he sells all over the world, and he brings it back into the village. And he's now started a school for the children, creating new roads. So this was a business that I wanted to support. But we actually sent somebody over to photograph and to talk to Nima and to meet some of the workers. And it's a very beautiful setting. And the photographer witnessed how the pulp was being cooked in big kettle cans, and then the pulp is laid out in screens and dried in the sun. So there was hillsides with screens of paper drying in the sun, and then that's pulled off, and then they hand tear the paper, and then they stitch the journals together. I mean, there's probably about 100 hands that go into making these journals, and there's little wooden buttons, and it's just a beautiful process. And when we saw the pictures of the women and the men working, they were all happy. I mean, and the photographer came back and said that it was just a beautiful environment.
And these journals support a way of life, right?
Yes.
How so?
Yeah. Well, they one, give jobs to people who need work. They preserve the environment because these bushes grow every 4 to 5 years.
And the people there are joyful.
They're joyful.
Which is what the journals are about.
Exactly. Exactly. And when you hold the journal, you realize you can feel the energy and the love in that journal, but you also recognize how many people went into making that beautiful handmade product. And you get quiet and you just start to write the first names that bubble up in your consciousness, and you keep writing. If you are guided to stop and just think about the name that you've just written, you can do that. In the workshops that I've run, one woman only wrote 4 names down. 2 people who were alive, 2 people who had died. And she did a lot of grieving work. Another man held the journal, and he didn't write one thing in the journal. And he shared with the group afterwards, he said, the thought of writing everybody I've ever known down was so profound, I just had to sit with that first. And so he didn't write anybody down. Some people have shared that they wrote a favorite tree that they used to sit by when they were little, and it gave them great peace and comfort to be by that tree. Other people have written names of their horses or dogs or cats, beloved animals that provided them so much love and who they had loved. So the journal will guide you, because really, truly, it's about going into remembrance. It's about feeling that gratitude and that grace. It's the opportunity to forgive. My work right now is trying to hold as many workshops as possible to have people experience this. when a workshop is held, it's very powerful, and the stories that are shared and told are incredibly powerful. And one person standing up and sharing the story allows somebody else to be brave and share their story, and it impacts the entire group. So that collective energy, there's incredible healing that takes place. And one woman, there were 65 people, all ages, men, women. She stood up in front of 65 people and she said, "I just forgave the man that raped me when I was 21 years old." And the embracing and the energy, and everybody, you could feel it, was supporting her. So that in itself, being able to stand up and say that, was healing for her. So not only what she felt during it, but afterwards being able to state, this is what happened to me. There was a young man, he was about 32 years old, and he was there with his wife. And he stood up with the group, and he shared that he had lost his brother 6 months ago, and then shared that there had been a feud in the family, and he had not spoken to his brother for 2 years. So he never got the opportunity to say goodbye. He never got the opportunity to resolve what was happening between them. And he looked at his wife, he didn't look at anybody else, and she was pregnant, 7 months pregnant, and he looked at her and said, "I'm ending this now. I'm going to start the dialogue."
It's never too late.
It's never too late. So one of the most unusual ways the journal has been used is we actually had somebody put their handprint on the back of the journal as a way of saying, "These are my memories, these are my loved ones," and personalizing it with her handprint. The journals are non-specific to a religion or a culture or a way of believing. The journals, like love, are universal, and each person will find the best way to use those journals to put forth their positive intentions and prayers and healing into the world. So when the heart is cracked open and resentments are let go, or whatever has happened or shifted, you're in a completely different place. And when my heart is open like that, I'm in a place of love.
It lets love in.
It lets love in, and it lets love emanate. And so you're also emanating that out. And so you're impacting other people just by being in that place.
And fear dissolves.
The fear dissolves. Nelson Mandela, I talk about this quote in my workshops. He said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it kills your enemies." And so if we could just realize by holding that in our bodies, and they're showing scientifically now, physiologically, those resentments, those hurts, those betrayals, they impact us physically. They impact us physically, they impact us mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. My understanding is we're going through great shifts and transformation, and these journals are a very simple but profound way to go back within yourself and choose to move forward through love. The intention of remembering, the intention of saying, I'm going to be a gift in this world. I'm going to move forward by putting out love and healing rather than staying stuck in fear or guilt or remorse or hatred or envy or any of the feelings that cause us to stay in a negative place or cause us to make decisions that aren't in our best interests or others' best interests. Mm-hmm. So I think the journals are incredibly important, even if they just sit on a table. Every time you were to glance at that journal, you would be reminded, oh, I have a choice of how I'm going to be in the world or how I'm going to be in this moment. Am I going to be awake? Am I going to be aware? Am I going to have an open heart? I see so many uses. I see them in the military, I see them in prisons, I see them in hospitals, I see them in schools with children, I see them in long-term care or retirement communities. I think the possibilities are endless.